definition is basically this: that is, it's violence or threat that is unauthorized and used for political gain. So those are the elements. Basically, it's an unofficial body, so it's not an army, it's not a country that goes to war. It's unauthorized, and it is either actual threat, actual violence, or the threat of violence to achieve a political goal. So today we will look at, okay, who are these terrorists? And so who are these terrorists, what drives them, and what can we do against terrorism? Or what are we doing against terrorism? So first, who are they? And I would like to start with just 2-3 minutes of video to give you an idea of what the general perception of terrorists are. And this is a presentation from a young man from Somalia. And I probably need to... Yes, okay.
I would like to talk to you about a story about a small town kid. I don't know his name, but I do know his story. He lives in a small village in southern Somalia. His village is near Mogadishu. Drought drives his small village into poverty and to the brink of starvation. With nothing left for him there, he leaves for the big city, in this case Mogadishu, the capital of Somalia. When he arrives, there are no opportunities, no jobs, no way forward. He ends up living in a tent city in the outskirts of Mogadishu. Maybe a year passes, nothing. One day he's approached by a gentleman who offers to take him to lunch, then to dinner, to breakfast. He meets these dynamic group of people, and they give him a break. He's given a bit of money to buy himself some new clothes, money to send back home to his family. He is introduced to this young woman. He eventually gets married. He starts this new life. He has a purpose in life. One beautiful day in Mogadishu, under an azure blue sky, a car bomb goes off. That small town kid with the big city dreams was the suicide bomber. And that dynamic group of people were Al-Shabaab, a terrorist organization linked to Al-Qaeda. So how does the story of a small town kid just trying to make it big in the city end up with him blowing himself up? He was waiting. He was waiting for an opportunity, waiting to begin his future, waiting for a way forward. And this was the first thing that came along. This was the first thing that pulled him out of what we call waithood. And the story repeats itself in urban centers around the world. It is the story of the disenfranchised, unemployed urban youth who sparks riots in Johannesburg, sparks riots in London, who reaches out for something other than waithood. For young people, the promise of the city, the big city dream is that of opportunity, of jobs, of wealth. But young people are not sharing the prosperity of their cities. Often it's youth who suffer from the highest unemployment rates. By 2030, 3 out of 5 people living in cities will be under the age of 18. If we do not include young people in the growth of our cities, if we do not provide them opportunities, the story of waithood, the gateway to terrorism, to violence, to gangs, will be the story of City 2.0. In my city of birth, Mogadishu, 70% of young people suffer from unemployment. 70% don't work, don't go to school. They pretty much do nothing. I went back to Mogadishu last month and
Okay, so the story goes on about what you can do in order to help these kids, help them and prevent them to become terrorists.
And what is the conclusion?
The conclusion basically is, okay, this is a typical story of, and the typical idea that we have about, about terrorism, about terrorists. If we think about terrorists, we think about, why doesn't this? we think about poor people, unemployed people, undereducated people, people who do not have an opportunity, who are disenfranchised by their environment, who come to the city and cannot find a job, cannot find a social environment, not find any support there, and who have anger. That is the typical idea of a terrorist. But the question is, if that is the typical terrorist, then the solution lies in offering opportunities to these kids. But the question that I ask myself is, okay, is that really true? Is that really our terrorists? Are they really poor, unemployed, undereducated, without any opportunity? Or is the image that the typical image that we have of terrorists actually false? So I started to look at unemployment and poverty. Is it always true that terrorists are unemployed, are poor? Well, think about Osama bin Laden. Extremely rich and well educated. Margherita Cagol was the founder of the Brigata Rosa in Italy. She and her boyfriend, the two people, founded a very aggressive, ultra left wing terrorist organization in Italy. And her father was very rich. Of course, she had job opportunities, whatever, but she became a terrorist. IRA volunteers. There was a study after IRA volunteers in the 1920s, and Northern Ireland. And the conclusion of that study was that actually volunteers who joined the IRA were more likely to have jobs than their peers. Yasser Arafat had a very good job as an engineer in Kuwait. The fathers of Shahzad Tanvir and Omar Khayyam, who are the London bombers, were sons of very wealthy businessmen. And there are many more examples of... They were a member of London terrorist organizations. Suicide bombers, people who...
They killed by themselves.
Actually, I don't think that they were killed. They tried to put a bomb on Heathrow.
Not in the bus.
Bus attacks.
In London.
They were... I'm not 100%, because London had quite a few incidents. Bus attacks, Heathrow, and I think they were from 2004. The bus attacks were later.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
This is 2004.
Yeah. So these two guys were captured in 2004. There are just a few examples of terrorists who were not driven by poverty, by waithood, by lack of opportunity. Still, they could become terrorists. So are all terrorists poor and unemployed? In order to understand terrorists, we cannot conclude that they are all poor and unemployed. Are all terrorists undereducated? Well, Yasser Arafat is a graduate from the Cairo University, which is the top leading university in the Middle East. The Baader-Meinhof-Gruppe, other than Baader, who was the leader, the Baader-Meinhof-Gruppe is the Rote Armee-Fraktion from Germany. The members of the Baader-Meinhof-Gruppe were all very highly educated.
Who's he?
The Baader-Meinhof-Gruppe was a little bit comparable to the Brigata Rosa
Dutch?
in Italy, German. The Baader-Meinhof-Gruppe, a little bit of a background, was formed in Germany after World War II. A few years after World War II, Germany was getting back on its feet, and there was a grand coalition at the beginning of the 1970s between the SPD and the CDU, which are the biggest parties in Germany. And these members of the Baader-Meinhof-Gruppe thought that this kind of consensus was basically a step back towards Nazism. And the capitalism and Nazism were basically, they felt that if they wouldn't stop their parents, that they would fall back into the Nazi regime, and Germany would make the same mistake again. So they decided that they would do whatever it took, whatever it had to take in order to stop Germany, to prevent Germany to become a Nazi state again. And they targeted capitalist goals.
So who's he? He's
Bader was the leader. He was a more charismatic figure who Ulrike Meinhof was a journalist.
or two person?
No, actually, it was founded by four people.
Okay.
Four people, and it became a rather big group with a lot of sympathy from in universities. At that time, universities were the breeding ground of.
You dive of Nazi?
No, I think actually most of these kids were born just after the war.
So they are supporting for Nazi?
No, they are the other way around.
Against Nazi?
They are very strongly against Nazism.
Leftists.
Yes, yeah. So they target capitalists. For example, we at my father works for Mercedes-Benz, and we received a death threat from the Rote Armee-Fraktion. And actually, more people in the Netherlands were targeted, and a few people were actually killed by the Rote Armee-Fraktion, even in the Netherlands, outside of Germany.
Why they killed?
Because they were capitalists. And
Oh,
capitalists.
they target capitalism.
Yes, yeah, because the capitalism was actually the reason that politicians support the capitalists.
Oh, they target
Right.
rich people.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So the Baader-Meinhof group, but the members of the Baader-Meinhof group were all very highly educated. From a group of 140 jihadi terrorists that were captured in high-profile cases, 54% of the people who were captured attended university and mostly had degrees in engineering. Engineering is maybe understandable because engineers tend to have a little bit more distance from society. But medicine, of course, is very counterintuitive. Why medicine? There's not really a clear answer to that. My guess is that perhaps people who were born and raised in developing countries, like the one thing that the parents want them to become is doctors, right? It's a very visible profession. So maybe the people who need this kind of reinforcement, that kind of whose other people's opinions around them are very important, tend to pick up medicine more than other people. Therefore, maybe that is the link with medicine, because it's completely counterintuitive that on the one hand you're healing people, on the other hand you're killing people.
Yeah, those areas can get money instead of
Yes.
economics and sort of areas.
Yes.
They cannot get money.
No.
Right?
So it's a very prestigious job. But so the main group is engineering and medicine. The 9/11 attacks, 16 of 25 people involved in those attacks, not all directly in the airplane, but who were directly involved in the 9/11 attacks. 16 went to university, and 2 had a PhD degrees, and 2 had enrolled in PhD programs. So they were all very highly educated. In the London terrorist cell that was found, there were 6 doctors, 1 technician, and 1 person who had a PhD in technical design. So 8 people, all very highly educated. Al-Zawahiri from Al-Qaeda is a surgeon. Fidel Castro was a lawyer. Is a lawyer, and Che Guevara a doctor. Orlando Bosch, who was the member of a counter-terrorist organization who was opposing Castro, is a pediatrician. Ahmed Omar Said Sheikh.
Castro means
Fidel Castro. Fidel Castro. Who was involved in the kidnapping and beheading of a Wall Street Journal reporter, attended a very expensive private school and graduated from the London School of Economics. So you cannot say that these people are undereducated. So are all terrorists undereducated? No, definitely not. Actually, it almost seems like terrorists, at least the high-profile terrorists.
Usually those terrorists is actually they themselves were going to be not suicide bomber.
Well, that's not. Well, look at this.
This is an exception.
This is an exception.
Are you familiar with
So, it is an exception, but I think the more high-profile case is, the more high-profile attack is, the more a terrorist organization would want to show how much they're willing to sacrifice. If they're going to sacrifice a young boy from the countryside in Somalia, that doesn't give a very high-profile risk. So I understand that, for example, the terrorists' attacks in Iraq are not very sophisticated. It involves a lot of people who are not really significant to their organization. But the high-profile cases that require a lot of planning and execution, where engineering skills are very important, involve more educated people. So definitely, I think there is a difference between the foot soldiers and the people who plan these terrorist attacks. But it also shows that we cannot just say, okay, it's easy to understand and easy to focus our attention to this group and that will eradicate terrorism. Probably not. So to bring this point home a little bit further, Princeton economist Kruger says that persons with higher incomes and more educations are actually more, not less likely to join terrorist groups, based on research that was performed. And all leaders of Hamas are university graduates, some with master's degrees. It's not a movement of poor, miserable people, but highly educated people who are using poverty to make the periphery of the movement more powerful. This is like a business. This is like a business. We have the highly educated people with money and potential who are using other people to achieve certain goals. So Hamas is no exception to that. Top mid-level leadership are well educated and financially well off, while the majority of foot soldiers will be less educated and poor. And then, as a rule of thumb, and then looking, for example, at IS versus an organization like the Baader-Meinhof Group or the Red Brigade, as a rule of thumb, that means that the larger the movement, the more diverse its members' economic and educational background. Small groups tend to have higher educated, more advanced people who do not need a large group to thrive, and larger groups have a more diverse membership.
Excuse me, Mr. Kruger is related to terrorism?
No, actually, he's an economist.
Economist.
Yes.
He's a.
But he did quantitative research in terrorism.
I see.
Yes. Yeah. So, if there is a connection between education, poverty, and terrorism, actually, we cannot say that one or both indicators can all automatically apply to terrorists. So I think that, like in a regular society, terrorists come from all walks of life. So it's just like a regular society. Terrorists are a reflection of society with high educated, low educated, people with lots of money and people with little means of income. A little means. So, if we cannot really explain terrorism through their education or through their wealth, who are they? Who are they? And this is more of a psychological analysis of terrorists. This is what the psychologists tell us about terrorism. For example, who are they? Well, one part of terrorists are the so-called idealists. They feel that they need to save a group that is being threatened, being oppressed, and this may not always be actually proper. Some people feel that they're looking for a goal, and they decide that they need to save a group. So, for example, Volkert van der G was a terrorist, or is a terrorist in the Netherlands. He killed a politician a number of years ago, who had a good chance to become a very leading figure in Dutch politics. Volkert van der G was a member of the Animal Liberation Front, which is a radical animal movement, but left wing, and he was very much wandering between organizations, looking for something that an ideal. And when this politician Pim Fortuyn was becoming more and more important, and he had an agenda that was rather right-wing and not very tolerant towards foreigners, Volkert van der G took it upon himself to kill Pim Fortuyn 2 days before the election. So unauthorized violence by Volkert van der G, basically because he was an idealist and he thought that he had to do it to protect the people in the Netherlands. But nobody asked him to do that. But this is a typical idealist. Respondents, those are terrorists who respond to things that they've experienced. People who grew up in the Gaza area, who have experienced bombing from Israel, who have seen what happened, and who see the good guys and the bad guys, who see that people stand up for them, and they think, okay, when I grow up, I want to be part of this group. I want to do something for my people. They respond to the situation and act upon that.
I mean, defended by terrorism.
No, for example, young Palestinians who see that bombs are being thrown by Israel, and who see that the PLO is standing up for them, or Hamas is defending their position. They feel, okay, this is something. They are the good guys. I want to be part of the good guys. Lost souls. And this is a thing that very often comes back, and I expect that this is one of the very important elements to become a terrorist. Many people are somehow isolated, ostracized. They not really belong to any group. That did not really find their own culture, their own identity yet, and they're looking for something that they can belong to. So they are isolated, ostracized, and they're looking for a purpose in a radical group. I understand that the 8th terrorist in Paris, who is on the run, actually is a homosexual. I don't know if it's 100% true, but it would fit this profile. Why? Because being a Muslim and being homosexual means that you would very, very likely be ostracized, being ousted from your society. So going to the big city, joining a group, trying to radical farewell to your past, and trying to find salvation in a radical, very radical group would actually fit this kind of person. Somebody who is completely lost, who doesn't like where he's at, who he is, who is not being accepted by his surroundings, and decides to join a radical group.
Discrimination, right?
Kind of. Basically, people are actively or feel that they do not belong, that they're looking for something. Then you have the revolutionaries who are involved in a cause over time, who have a long-term goal that has been dragging on for maybe years, maybe generations even. The wanderers, the people who are, and this is actually happening to a lot of young people, who are looking for, okay, where do I belong to? actually Fidel Castro in his early life was also not very clear in what he wanted. He initially had more or less democratic ideas, and then gradually he shifted, being exposed to different kinds of people. He shifted his ideas, and he was basically looking for a walk of life, an opportunity for him to mean something. Converts. These are the people who, what you very often see, for example, in prisons, what you see on television in the United States, for the United States prisons. Very often, if you see these television priests or something, they have been in prison and they see the light, they find the Lord, they change their world around, and all of a sudden they cannot break easily. They have to go 180 degrees in order to find something. That is the moment that you usually make a radical decision. People are being converted who feel that their life is not where they want to be, who feel that they need to take a drastic step in order to get up. Converts also quite often look for a very clear-cut solution. Now, a lot of terrorism that we experience today, the majority of terrorism, is in the Muslim world. Why are so many volunteers joining IS, for example? Because IS offers a very simple, clear-cut, no doubt solutions. Either you're with us or you're without us. It's a very binary world. There's only one way, and that's the way of Allah. This is
when you say convert, usually that is from a Christian to the Muslim.
Convert basically is just means that you are changing your ways, and not necessarily Christianity. Okay. You can be converted to Christianity. You can also be converted to Muslim. You can be converted from a supporter of the soccer club A to soccer club B, or it can be anything.
Right. Thank you.
So it's just it means that you just change from one persuasion to another.
Thank you. I see.
And then you have the compliance. People who just under group pressure decide to join, who want to be who want to join their friends, who cannot leave their social group is encouraging them to have romantic interest, for example. Girls who decide to join IS because they have a romantic interest. It's in the Netherlands we have a problem. I'm from the Netherlands. In the Netherlands we have this problem with the lover boys, guys who start dating girls and then force them into prostitution. Unbelievable, but even a romantic interest of young and unstable people who have not found their place yet. They only see their boyfriend as the only stable factor in life, and they do whatever it takes to follow his will. So,
how did you find out those issues?
From sources, from psychological reports.
Somewhere?
On the internet. So, yeah. Yeah, I was fascinated by this topic. So there are different. So who are they? Again, here there's no clear-cut answers. There are different reasons why people join a terrorist organization. Different roads lead to terrorism. In general, most potential terrorists did not lost their place, did not find or they did lose their place in society. And that is a given. Basically, people who do not really fit into society are more susceptible to become a terrorist. But what exactly drives them? Because there is, okay, you can be lost, but what drives them? What triggers these people? That there must be something that says, okay, because I mean many people are lost, but not so many people take up the weapons or kill themselves. So what drives them? For example, the Rote Armee-Fraktion, as an example, the Baader-Meinhof group, that's the same group, they have the different names. in their case, it was a do or die. They really felt if they wouldn't stand up for Germany, for the future of Germany, then Germany would become a Nazi country once again. So for them, they said, not again. The history cannot repeat itself again. Therefore, they felt that they needed to take action to make sure that Nazism didn't have a chance in Germany. And they felt that this was more or less a war was justified. A war was justified inside Germany in order to prevent Germany to become a Nazi state again. So do or die. A lot of people, a lot of terrorists feel that okay, if we don't do anything, we will become extinct. We will lose. So in order to protect ourselves, we need to take action. Victims. People feel.
What do you mean, RAF?
Rote Armee-Fraktion, the Red Brigade from Germany, Rote Armee-Fraktion. Yeah. Victims. The victimhood plays also a role, and victimhood doesn't always mean that you yourself are a victim. I found this video on Facebook, and it is amazing. Just how deep that victimhood can go. Doesn't respond. Okay. Anyway, then I will tell you what it was about. Sorry about that. It was. It doesn't connect. It was a video. Where young people in the United States who were from Indian descent, who had Indian blood, were asked about Christopher Columbus, 1492, because there is a Columbus Day. Like this, the Thanksgiving, I believe, is related to Christopher Columbus or Columbus Day. Anyway, they have a holiday in the United States for Christopher Columbus, and this is then the response of these people is like, it's unbelievable. He's evil. He's like Adolf Hitler. He's absolutely so many emotions. 500 years later, still those emotions are there. So if you realize that those emotions can be triggered 500 years later, then imagine what these emotions can be for people who are being threatened today, or whose parents have been threatened, or whose grandparents have been.
But why did you not say that sort of sentiment in the past? Just only they started to talking about.
Why? Because this actually. So why? Let's take a lot of young Muslims in Europe. Why do so many young Muslims who were born and raised in Europe, whose parents came to Europe, Western Europe, to work in the factories, like for example Germany, Netherlands, France, why didn't their parents radicalize, but their children do radicalize? And I think the answer is like ostracization, so not having a place in society. The parents who came to Europe, they had a goal. They wanted to make more money, so they came to the Netherlands. They got a job. They worked very hard. They brought their family to the Netherlands, and they tried to build up a life. But they did not really become part of our society. They kept their own society, and they worked very hard. Then they got children, and those children, they grew up at home, living in Turkey or in Morocco, because their parents both were Turkish and Moroccan. They speak Turkish and Moroccan at home. They are being born and raised the North African way. Then they go to school. And in school, everything is different. They have much more freedom. There is a completely different attitude and atmosphere. So those kids start to behave differently. And because they start to behave differently, they get into trouble at home. Because at home, they do not understand this Western way of behavior. That's not how kids are supposed to behave. At school, they also get trouble because they are not exactly like other kids over there. So they do not really fit in the Dutch society, they do not really fit in with the society at home. Basically, they are without a culture. They don't really have a home base. So they are more or less like living outside of a culture. And then they start looking for their own identity. And their own identity, finding your own identity can be very difficult. So you start looking, you start wondering, and what fits me? What defines me? And then comes IS with a very clear and cut answer. What is the answer to who am I? You are a Muslim and you are to be faithful to Allah, which is a very clear and easy to understand answer.
So those Islam are much ostracized. But what relationship regarding to the Columbus, India?
Columbus is one of the reasons. So, okay, a feeling of victimhood, of injustice that has been done to you or to your parents, to your grandparents.
Did they study in the school about Columbus Day?
Yes, yeah. So the kids who are from Indian descent have seen that they are the Native Americans, basically. And they see that they have been decimized by people who came to the United States and actually killed almost every single Indian who originally lived there, completely mistreated them, basically wiped out the entire Indian population.
But they didn't took any complaint in the past, right? Just only from this year they discuss about a lot.
No. This is much older than that. Yeah.
I didn't know.
This is much older than that.
Native Indian was killed. The number of 10 million.
No, almost killed 80%, more than 80%.
Not 10 million people.
More than that.
More than that.
Yeah, more than 80% of Indians are killed by European invaded.
And people who did survive
People.
were put in reserves in places that were hardly fertile, completely in isolation.
They lived there at the time over 100 million people.
I don't know original numbers.
Yeah, maybe
maybe
around that number.
Really?
Almost a kill.
Yeah.
So many?
That's why Indian descendant feels
a lot of resentment. But what was very impressive about that movie, I thought, was the intense emotions that it still stirs 500 years later. So this kind of emotion, this kind of feeling that can, when people are looking for their roots, young Indians who feel that they're Indian, are looking at the past and feel, and rightfully so, that they have been mistreated. But those kind of emotions can also go over the top and turn them into terrorists.
So current American Indian, they have privilege to owning gambles and sort of business. They have advantage to do in sort of areas.
Kind of affirmative action, like.
Yes, but not in
a school or university at all. Not right to the what can I say, public society, but something like gambling or.
Oh yes, so gambling area.
Shadow business, shadow.
Yes, that's right. Almost all American Indians, they organize instead of Jewish. Yes.
Oh, Las Vegas as well?
Yes, right.
I see.
Yes.
New for me, thank you.
still American people have some obligation to support them because they have some wrongdoing beforehand, right? This was yes, you get it.
Yes.
Because this guy is Indian, right?
He got lost coming here, and he's the one that named us Indians because he thought he was in India. So he's not a good figure to the native community.
Confused? I don't think we should have a holiday for it.
But she looks like Chinese, right?
Claiming
Not
North America is like
she's
land that could be claimed and could be taken. It's the start of a lot of pain.
Christopher Columbus.
I guess ignorance.
Murder, rapist,
Genocide.
Asia.
The atrocities he committed just grotesque. And the scars are still felt today.
Evil? Evil.
Fuck yeah. Fuck Columbus.
Fuck Christopher Columbus.
That's a big fuck you. He's the first terrorist in America, that's for sure. So according to the U.S. government law, it says if you partake in somebody that's stealing, then you're just as guilty. Everybody knows the United States was stolen. So therefore, all those that are original, that knows about the genocide, the rape, the murder, the theft, the putting on the reservations on a rock that they couldn't survive on, they're going to have to face judgment.
murderer, rapist. It always was weird to me to have that day off in celebration of somebody. Like, we don't have a day for Hitler, but it's, it's the same thing.
Like there's so many other people that Italian Americans or Italians can hold up as their heroes besides Columbus.
Wrong.
So
She's a daughter of Yellen.
Yeah, exactly.
the point here is that actually pain can be felt even though it was not personally experienced throughout time and from generation to generation. It is still not unlikely, for example, that people from Armenia would feel pain that their parents, grandparents have experienced the genocide over there. So that could actually drive people to become terrorists. Willing to sacrifice for a higher moral cause. Find a clear-cut case. Okay, this is something I can fight for. This is something that I do not have to worry about. This is something that I can dedicate all my energy to. Young people, very attractive idea. Violent.